Hey everybody, how's it going? It is the return of Star Wars Wastelands. This time not a podcast, but a broadcast. And joining me on the first episode of this shindig, first up, he's a vet. He's been here a long time. It's Mr. Johnny V. What's going on, man?
Can you call it Day One Original a vet? I mean, it's like its own thing.
You love using that day one term.
I do.
In fact, there's something we're going to talk about on our next show that we record tonight that I thought to myself while smoking outside earlier, oh, he's going to go on about this day one shit again. We didn't even get to that show, and you brought up the day one stuff.
Gotta wear your term of service badge with honor, you know.
If you say so. And joining us, if you are a old Star Wars Wastelands listener or viewer, and for whatever reason haven't watched us or listened to us since then, you probably don't recognize this guy. But if you tune into Phantom Empire regularly, then he's kind of OG himself. It's Kieran. What's going on, dude?
Not too much. Very excited to talk about Star Wars. It's the reason I got into the podcast game, and I always am happy to get a chance to talk about my Star Wars fandom.
I'm thrilled that we actually, for almost an hour tonight, get to sit down and just talk Star Wars. I can't remember the last time that I came on air for an hour just to talk about Star Wars. And the crazy thing is, we're going to be doing it every week for the foreseeable future with an off week here and there. But
without getting criticized.
Pardon?
Without getting criticized.
Yeah, I'm just excited. Like, I can't remember the last time I was this excited to talk Star Wars. I'm just in a positive place mentally with the franchise right now. I know not everybody is, but things are good right now. Johnny, man, Star Wars Wastelands, it's back. Anything you want to say to the viewers?
No, I mean, I think you said it pretty well yourself there with everything you said about it. You know, it's a fun place. We talk Star Wars, without having to worry about 10,000, flaming comments anytime we open our mouths. I'm all for that.
Yeah, no, it's I love Star Wars. There's so much Star Wars coming out. There's so much to get to. And this show, unlike Phantom Empire Live, is going to be a little more organized, a little more produced. And right off the top here, let's get to our first order of business. All right. Apologies if you hear my dick dog in the background. He's choosing today to just be a big dick. First order of business for tonight is I want to talk about the history of the show a little bit right off the top. Star Wars Wastelands is something that myself and Johnny and our friend Mondo, who is back in some form, he's not back full time. He'll be on every episode, but he has his own little mini segment, which will allow us to take a little bit of a 2-minute break, and he'll pop in from time to time. So we're here with Mondo's blessing. We started this thing way back in, I think we were preparing for it in May of 2015, and then we launched it in June of 2015, and then it was just kind of like 3.5 to 4 years of just insaneness. Some episodes going 4.5 to 5 hours long. Because there was content to talk about, and then Star Wars sort of entered a dry area, and we moved on and did other things. And now you have Kenobi, Bad Batch, Andor, Mandalorian season 4, The Acolyte, Ahsoka, and Mando season 5, all coming in and I guess this Star Wars Stranger Things show, which I can only assume is going to be that Tales of the Jedi thing. All that within like a 2-year period, guys. It's the most Star Wars we've ever gotten. It feels like the right time to be diving back into a Star Wars show. Just your thoughts right off the top, guys, on the Star Wars content coming.
Oh, it's amazing. It's definitely exciting, and like there's, we got that Disney conference call where we got a bunch of names of different projects coming up, And some of them I was very excited about, and some of them I was, we'll see what happens. And some of them I just pretty much knew I wasn't going to be that interested in. But all the things you just mentioned there are very exciting. I'm excited about all of those things. And also lots of great books coming out. Possibly some video games coming out. Might be a little bit more in the distant future, but there's lots of Star Wars period coming out, and not all Star Wars ends up being good Star Wars, but I'm very excited about most of these projects. I'm great. I'm interested to talk about them, and we'll see what happens when they come out.
See, that's very important to note. Is like we all have, we have some similar Star Wars taste. We all seem to like very different things. Like Kieran's a huge sequel fan. Johnny's definitely more OT, and I'm more prequel. Mine's prequel, then OT, then the sequel trilogy. So you get a little bit of a mixed basket from all of us, and so we'll be fair to everything. It's the one thing that, well, one of us might pick on something one day, the other person might, pick on something that we like the next or defend it. You just never know what you're going to get here because our tastes vary, which I think is a good thing. There's a bunch of Star Wars related content coming up on the channel, and some of those things are Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi and Star Wars Andor. They're both coming out this year. For Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm going to do like day of reviews. I don't think I'll have the time to put together like reactions because you have to heavily edit those to have those hit YouTube properly. But we'll definitely have day of reviews, and then we'll also review it on the as a panel the following Star Wars Wastelands episode. Same thing with Andor. There's a chance I'm going to be on some other podcast or YouTube show Star Wars content when Kenobi comes out. So it'll be everywhere, and we'll cover as much as we can. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is I haven't talked with these guys about how we're going to do it yet. I have an idea. It's going to be a little bit different and a little bit quicker, but Star Wars trivia is coming back. Star Wars trivia. But we really want to go back to, and Johnny might remember this, to me, trivia was the most fun when now and then it would be us in it, but you'd also go get, different Star Wars podcast hosts from different shows, and then they would come on the show to participate in trivia against a different Star Wars podcast host. I thought at the best of times, that's how we did it. Thoughts on that, Johnny?
Well, I mean, I think you're exactly right. When it's just us, we just end up running into the same knowledge bases. The knowledge base isn't going to change week to week between us. It really it isn't. You can do a bit of, maybe read a new book or a new comic or something, but generally the knowledge base isn't going to change, and going out and getting other members of the community involved provides different knowledge bases that you can tap into for questions and answers that you just don't get. Otherwise we're kind of stuck with the types of questions we can ask each other without delving into the ridiculous.
And then when someone does really good, we can get them to get beat down by my sister Cosma.
Oh boy, it's gonna be good times though. We're gonna have some fun with it. We'll have like a rankings, but it'll be a much shorter version of trivia just because we're under time constraints. So, and it won't be an every episode thing because some episodes there's just gonna be too much to get to. So yeah, lots coming up on the channel here, and more specifically Star Wars Wastelands on the channel. And we hope you join us each and every week. But let's get to our first real discussion segment of the day, and it's the HoloNet rundown. All right, it's the HoloNet rundown. There was a rumor that came out today. Now, to be clear, it came from, at least where I first saw it reported, was Bespin Bulletin. That's why I'm talking about it. To me, there are two massive Star Wars scoopers that are right 90% of the time, and it's making Star Wars and Bespin Bulletin. But to be clear, it's not Bespin Bulletin reporting it. He's covering someone else's rumor, and he dives into this. The rumor is that Jude Law may have been cast in the Star Wars High Republic show that has been compared to Stranger Things, that is shooting under the working title of Grammar Rodeo, which I believe is a episode of The Simpsons. So they're working off that. And Bespin Bulletin goes on to say, hello there and happy LEGO Star Wars Day. Initially, I did not want to cover this rumor as it came from a very questionable source, but he keeps getting asked about it. And there's a bunch of social media clout chasers. I don't think that's us, but who knows? Those who bandwagon every rumor peddling this story. So is Jude Law in a Star Wars project? And what would that project be? Basically, he goes on to say that it is starting to come out at a few places, but nowhere overly reputable. But he goes as far to say because it's coming from an account that's right 50-50, they have gotten things right, but they've also gotten a lot of things wrong, that it's a 50-50 chance. I don't know about you guys. I'm not, I don't go looking to watch a Jude Law movie, but when I watch movies with Jude Law in them, he's fantastic. Thoughts on Jude Law joining Star Wars, and I suppose more specifically a High Republic-based show?
I mean, I really like Jude Law's work. He's actually very multi-talented. He can play a good guy. He can play a bad guy. I recently watched him in Captain Marvel, where he appeared to kind of be a good guy and then turned out to be kind of a bad guy. Spoiler alert for a movie that came out forever ago. And I really like him in the movie Enemy at the Gates. It's a war movie about snipers. He's a good actor, and I can see him playing anything from a Jedi Knight who's teaching or being a mentor. If this is going to be kind of a show with teen characters in it, or I can see him being a bad guy. So it would be very exciting. I think he fits the type of casting that they would like to do. Obviously worked with Disney before on Marvel projects, so it makes sense and could happen. Also, it could be something that someone threw out there for clicks. It could be we got this covered type of news, So I mean, I'm not going to get excited for something that's not at all confirmed, but I totally welcome it.
I'm definitely not going to get excited for it just because it is something I totally want to happen.
Yeah.
So, the cynical side of me is just like, well, I want it, so it's not happening.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool if it did happen. It'd be really cool, and I think you could never go wrong adding talent. Johnny?
I mean, I'm all for it. Jude Law is he's a guy that I didn't necessarily, I wasn't necessarily a big fan of him for a very long time. He seemed kind of wishy-washy, I guess. And then, there was a string of some good movies that he was in, and one of my favorite movies that's kind of undersung, Enemy at the Gates, was a performance that I was wowed by it. And more recently, I mean, come on, the guy's Dumbledore. A lot of people don't like the new movies, but I do. And I think he does a stellar performance as that character. And if you've never watched it, the Young Pope series on, I think it's HBO, is a very interesting character piece.
I seen a movie with him and Ewan McGregor in it once, and I thought it was really good, but the name is slipping my mind. I can't pinpoint where it's from. Poor Tommy, our buddy Tommy, by the way, is modding this thing today, and he's having problems behind the scenes, let alone on screen. Poor guy. Our old friend Jake Damon says Star Wars Wastelands. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. I'm going to use the super chat to say the sequels suck ass. Enjoy my credits, peasants. Thanks, Jake. That's appreciated, man. Jake did our first couple of our first logo, which appears in the intro credits right before we transitioned through all the logos we had to the new one. Definitely appreciated, man. Means a lot. Yeah, Jude Law, Star Wars. I'd be for it. I don't see why not. Now let's get to some more credible things, and that is this is full-on spoiler warning, simply because it comes from making Star Wars. They're reporting it. They're not reporting off someone else's. And apparently we are going to get a post-credit scene after episode 2. And if you guys remember, we now get episode 1 and 2 on the same day, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But we're getting the post-credit scene in episode 2, and spoiler alert, it's the appearance of Darth Vader. And it's kind of cool. Vader's going to get his first ever post-credit scene or mid-credit scene, whatever you want to call it. And basically, we're going to see him like this. Only instead of it being very foggy, you're basically going to see everything, to my understanding. If you don't see everything during the post-credit scene, you eventually see everything. And I kind of like this because, the one thing I loved about Rogue One is how they shot Vader inside the bacta tank. Just to quote our old friend Dave McRae, the mood and atmosphere of this part during Rogue One, guys, I absolutely loved. And the idea that we're going to get to see it again, but this time, a little more hands-on, because they actually have Hayden and not just some lookalike, or I think they actually built a prop for it, too, for some of the shots for Rogue One. I'm excited. So thoughts of this being the way Darth Vader, or maybe more so Anakin Skywalker, is being introduced into the Obi-Wan Kenobi series?
I mean, it's the most logical, to introduce him that way, because then you're not sort of stuck cramming it in an awkward place. Credits, I mean, it would make sense now that they've sort of done that 2-episode block the first week. Ending that with Darth Vader is a very smart way to catch certain fans who aren't, they're not so big onto everything, but, like we said on an episode of, Phantom Empire Live a couple weeks ago, the Darth Vader name holds gravitas in the pop culture world. So, just being able to attach that to it, and with the phenomenon of the post-credit scene that Marvel has built, in the last 2 decades, it makes a lot of sense to include it in what would probably be the biggest post-credit scene in Star Wars. I mean, we had the Boba Fett one and Mandalorian.
I think it's the only one.
I was gonna say, I think that's probably the only other one I can think of.
I don't even think the animated stuff ever had post-credit scenes, so
not that I can recall. So, branching out and bringing that into Star Wars, I think makes a lot of sense, because it's something that people expect nowadays. To the point now you're starting to see more and more, smaller theaters keeping track of movies that have post-credits or mid-credit scenes, so that people know when they can safely leave the theater. So I think it makes a lot of sense to do this here and then bring him in there, and so you can build to that moment, because it's definitely going to be a big moment, and building to it and then fading away, I think makes a lot of sense and could be a lot of fun, and just an amazing scene if done properly.
Before we let Kieran get in here, Melissa in the chat says her mom fell last night, is in the hospital. She broke her femur. That's terrible, and we're definitely thinking about you and your family during this time, and we wish her a speedy recovery for sure. Hopefully we provide you just a few minutes relief to forget about what you're going through right now. So.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Kieran, in addition to what we've already talked about, to add some context to it, is we're going to see Vader's eyes open, or Anakin's eyes. It depends how you look at it, because the reason we see him wake up, this is to my understanding. This is me trying to provide some context to what I've heard and been told. Is again, this is coming from making Star Wars. Is Vader? Pardon me, not Vader. Obi-Wan and Leia are together, and it like sort of sends a bit of a ripple through the Force, and it's like a trigger for, even though he
Yeah.
doesn't know about the kids, it would still be a big enough to be like, oh, what the hell?
Yeah, yeah.
So it makes sense. Thoughts?
It's important to him. It's important to him too. It's, it's obviously it's his family and it's his mentor, and it makes sense the way that the Force has worked in the past and things like that. It makes sense. Also makes, quite, like, as soon as you said spoiler alert, there's a scene after, I was like, oh, it's going to be Vader. Like, I said it in my head right away. It makes so much sense. It just pops right away. And yeah, it would set the rest of the series up to be like, hey, I gotta watch that next episode. Like, if you're not already hooked, or if you're already on the edge, and it becomes the water cooler thing. Hey, did you see Darth Vader when it came back? It makes sense. It's I don't want to say it's genius because it's kind of obvious.
Yeah.
But it makes sense and it's good. And also, you can't speak underwater, so it should be great.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that took a second. I would think he could. I think he has to have the thing on still.
No, it better not be a line.
I think he might have spoken Rogue One, didn't he? Or he was getting spoken to.
I don't remember him speaking, just being spoken to.
Okay, so I don't know. I hope they handle it with care. I mean, we already seen the one screenshot, and we see that the set looks basically identical to what it did in Rogue One. So I just hope they handle it with care, and I think it looks really cool. I know there's going to be that crowd out there that's, I don't want to see Vader in a weakened state or emotional or out of his armor. And it's like, well, this is what he is. He's literally, more machine than man, as Ben Kenobi says in the original trilogy.
It's a part of Vader that it doesn't get touched on in cinema or anything. That the fact that he's in constant pain, the fact that he's he's kind of being Frankensteined by the Emperor. He's kind of the things that the suit. I don't know if the things that the suit do to him and the way that he is canon anymore, but it's a part that's not really shown in any on-screen thing. It's more of the books that have told us about that sort of stuff. So I think it's something to be explored and for people to be able to see.
Yeah, I think you nailed it when you said he's in constant pain. I mean, like, the one thing that we do know the show's going to do a good job of showing is you're going to get to see sort of what day-to-day life is for him. And it's terrible. He literally has to get put back together every day. And that's probably not a very enjoyable experience, even if he isn't burnt to a crisp anymore, he's still getting stabbed, and his life is hell. That's kind of the point of it is, you get to see big badass Vader, but underneath it all, he might have the worst, living experience of any living being in the galaxy at the moment. So, Johnny, any thoughts on that at all?
I mean, it's going to be an interesting dichotomy, to see Anakin in this state, because like you said, it's something we've never seen before. Not really. I mean, the closest we've ever seen was him being hauled off Mustafar in 3 and stuck in the Bacta and being rebuilt, and rechristened Vader, leading up to that god awful scream, and not because it sounded bad, but because it was stupid and boring and didn't fit anything that was going on at the time. But we've never really seen how he deals. Like, we don't know how fixed he is, or how healed he is, or what is actually going on underneath the suit, because from 3 to death, we only ever see him outside of the suit in maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a couple minutes worth at most, between the time we see him in the Bacta in Rogue One and the time he's demasked in Jedi, and dying. So I mean, it really doesn't count for much of anything, if we're being honest. So I mean, we don't really know just how much of his experience is, all of that. And I mean, we know how jarring an experience Bacta can be, just from what we've seen through the Book of Boba Fett. Was our first real glimpse of the kind of things your body deals with inside the tube. It's going to be very interesting to see Darth Vader's experience like that, especially since we've been talking sort of about, Obi-Wan's possibility of dealing with PTSD and, those types of things. Just imagine what it's like for Anakin. That's an entirely different can of worms that, you see in different moments. You sort of see Anakin pierce through Vader. And I think that would be one of those times where we actually get to see that a bit more. And I think it could be very, very interesting and very jarring as a viewer experience. And I'm excited for that possibility.
From what I understand, and I don't mean just the show, but like just Vader and new canon, is it sounds like whenever he doesn't have to be in the suit or around people, he's in the Bacta tank. And I don't necessarily think that's something like, obviously before the prequels came out, that's probably not something anybody thought of.
Well, I mean, there was a long time I remember a theory that, the suit contained Bacta, like that he was constantly submerged in Bacta in order to stay alive. So, I mean, it's just, it could, I guess, confirm or deny that. I mean,
well, I found the thing you brought up about the Book of Boba Fett and the dreams when you go into Bacta. It's like, you could also see, the Anakin that remains in Vader, and obviously he did. That's how he was able to come back. It rather being in the tank, and obviously there's the Padme portion of this that fuels his entire life.
It could explain, to a much greater degree why he gets progressively more vile. The only time we ever really see goodness peek through him is when he's dealing with Luke or things about Luke or Leia. Those are the only time you actually get a chance to sort of pierce through and see the Anakin. Whereas if he's just dealing with, random underlings, he's just as likely to choke you to death as throw you against a wall or kill you or some other form or fashion. He is a very dark and twisted individual, and it'd be nice to see why, or at least what he's dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
I hope they're not afraid to go hands-on with this. Like, you've already peeled back the curtain when you did the prequels. And then you did it more with Rogue One. If you're putting Vader front and center in the show, like we believe for at least 4 of the episodes, let's really dive into this. Because when are we going to get another chance? Who knows? At least when it's still relevant.
Outside of books or something, never.
And the last bit we have here in the HoloNet rundown is what I mentioned earlier. The Obi-Wan Kenobi release date's been shifted to the Friday there. Primarily because of Star Wars Celebration. They're showing the 2 episodes there. Guys, how do you feel about this? Like, it comes out 2 days later now, but now we get 2 episodes instead of 1. That's basically, in an hour, somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours of Star Wars content and Obi-Wan content. Obviously, it also means we'll have 3 episodes within like a 4-day period or a 5-day period, and half the show will be over just like that. But I actually like it like this. I can't wait to see both of these episodes out once. And it's not a big deal to me that's not dropping on Star Wars, the original birthday of Star Wars, pardon me.
My best watching content day is a Friday. So Friday is my day when my kids head over to Grandma's house. And I get my most content viewing in on Friday. So that's fine for me. I don't complain about having to wait months. When things get pushed back months, I don't complain about it. So days should be a nice view, a nice, almost, movie length type of enjoyment of Star Wars.
I mean, it made sense to me to move the date, especially once we got the announcement of the Miss Marvel release date, for that series. And I don't ever foresee a situation where they're putting out 2 tentpole releases on the same day. So keeping, Marvel on Wednesday and Star Wars on Friday, I think sort of solves your problem with that.
It's only for 1 day, though.
It's what?
It's only for the one Friday. So they're releasing on Friday, right? The first Friday, the 2 episodes, and then they're going back to a Wednesday release. This has already been confirmed. That's why I said you get 3 episodes in like 4 days, basically. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I don't know, more than 4
Does that mean that Miss Marvel will be on the same day as that?
as Star Wars going forward after that? It will. Yeah, and I don't necessarily. That's a big. I don't know how big that show is to them.
I don't know if the crossover is going to be a big deal. I know that, you know, it's probably not going to be. It's almost, from what I've seen in the trailer, aimed a little bit more at kids as well. So there's probably going to be some adults who forego seeing Miss Marvel. Obviously, we're not. You know, this is not a talk about Marvel show. So
Yeah, I mean, it's got nothing for me personally. So that's just me, though.
CNET put out an article 2 days ago on the 31st of March that has the release dates all on Friday.
Well, then they're wrong. I will stand by Jason and what they put out over there. And as far as I know, it's the one Friday just to accommodate Star Wars Celebration, and then it goes back to Wednesday release dates. So that's what's out there right now, but we will keep everybody up to date. And if we find out that it is on Fridays, then great. Doesn't matter to me either way. Wednesdays, Fridays, Tuesdays, whatever. But I will be watching the show as early as I can, not to avoid spoilers. I mean, we basically know the fucking show at this point. But just to, enjoy Star Wars for what it is. And it's probably the most peaceful time too that I can watch it at without disturbances. But there you have it. That's going to be the HoloNet rundown for this episode. And we are going to dive into It's in the Game. Alrighty, so each week, one of us is going to get to choose a Star Wars novel and a Star Wars video game to focus in on for a few minutes. Obviously, this is a brief little segment, and we're going to have all the time in the world to go through the entire catalog of Star Wars novels and games eventually here. And the first one that I want to talk about is Rogue Squadron. No, not that Patty Jenkins movie that may or may not happen at this point, but rather Star Wars Rogue Squadron, which came out for the PC and Nintendo 64. The very first place I got to play this was the man at the bottom of the screen. It was at Johnny's place. And that is the wrong show, damn it. Way to go, Tommy. Anyway, first place I got to play Star Wars Rogue Squadron was at Johnny's. And for me, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, remind you, if you look back at what a game looks like in the 90s today, you probably think it looks like dog shit. But at that time, in the mid to late 90s, it was the most immersive Star Wars experience that I have ever had. Like, it was the closest to feeling like you were actually in Star Wars that any Star Wars game had done to that point. And I think before that, Dark Forces had come out, and I think there was another one. But they didn't do what Rogue Squadron did for me. What about you guys? Where's Rogue Squadron for you guys?
Did it come before or after Shadows of the Empire?
I think Shadows was first.
Yeah, I think Shadows was late 96 and Rogue was 97, I think.
I think that's what I thought as well.
I think they wanted Rogue Squadron as an opening, and they just couldn't get it done. They talk about it in the making of Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah. I actually kind of preferred the Shadows of the Empire space battles, but I did really love this game. I remember my best friend Andy had both of those games, but we used to go play Star Wars games at his house all the time. Fantastic. It's done really well. I mean, even the controls, I went back and played it probably 3-4 years ago, and the controls are still fun to play with. It's still exciting. They did a really good job designing the game. Obviously, the graphics are not, they don't match up. A lot of the original titles that went to 3D, PlayStation 1 games and Nintendo 64 games look terrible, but it, was going from side scroller to seeing things in somewhat 3D. So, yeah, I thought it was a great game. I really liked it. I don't remember too much about the story though, so I can't imagine the story was that strong.
It was kind
Because
of
I don't remember the story. I just remember the gameplay. So
I feel like
I guess that would be a little bit of a
I
down.
think it was just mission to mission, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's more like a Star Fox game, right? You got the chatter, you got a little bit of, hey, we're going here to blow up this and whatever, but not really much in terms of like adding characters or anything like that.
Actually, come to think of it, I don't know if you guys remember. I don't know if either of you had a 64 at launch. I sure as hell didn't. But I think the 64 boxes at launch came with some Shadows of the Empire artwork on it. I believe the Stormtrooper was on the box, and on the back of it, it had Shadows of the Empire. I could be wrong, though. So Shadows definitely came first.
It did at some point. Shadows did come. I actually checked the dates here. Shadows came September of '97, with Rogue Squadron following in early '98.
And we, for those that submitted some questions, we will try to get to a few of them at the end of the show. If you want to be guaranteed to have your question read on air, then feel free to send in a super chat, but we will try to get to some of them. I see there's a few sitting there. All right, Johnny, thoughts on Rogue Squadron, man? I first played it at your place.
I mean, it was an amazing game. It was fun. It was a game that benefited greatly by the expansion pack, that came out. It made a great deal of sense. Like, I mean, Kieran, you talked about the change, into 3D and all that, and at the time, this game looked phenomenal. I mean, as far as video games went, I mean, to this point, we'd been stuck with, garbage-looking, flight games. I mean, if you played X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and those types of games on the PC, even they looked, like a step down compared to this. This took advantage of every part of that, and being able to get, either flying it with the cockpit view or in that third-person view, it was a really fun game. That just felt really good. Like I was never a Skyfox guy. I didn't enjoy the Skyfox games. They just weren't my cup of tea. They were fun, but they weren't for me. But this game, oh boy, this game was amazing because it was, it was ships I knew, it was characters I knew, it was people I knew, it was places I knew. So it was definitely a step up for me as a player, experiencing all of those things and settings that I knew quite well. And I mean, of course, you had, the Death Stars and, the sands of Tatooine and all those things that you knew. And it was fun getting to fly those things with the story that they built in.
Sorry, you said this was 97 or 98?
98.
So I don't know if you guys remember, but there's a few maps. I think there's a couple of Tatooine maps. There's at least one where if you actually fly close enough to the town, even though they look terrible, you can actually see people walking through the town even back then. And it's like, that's a pretty cool effort for detail. Again, they look like little specks the closer you get to it, and the chances are if you were close enough to see them, you were dying because you were going to crash.
Yeah,
and
which happened a lot in that game.
Where the convoy was going to. There was a lot of protect the convoy. So yeah, no, that's my choice, though, for it's in the game this week. And we're actually going to move into Jedi Archives after our break. We're going to take a little short break here and welcome Mondo back to the show for the first time in a while. And if anybody wants to grab a drink, now's the time to do so. Viewer discretion is advised, obviously. It's Mondo. So.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another edition of Mondo Minute, a minute with me, and that's probably about as long as I would last on a bicycle, because I am grossly out of shape. Speaking of bicycles, what did Yoda ride as a child? Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I forgot the lyrics to that song. He rode a do-cycle because there is no try. And this is the last edition of this. Adios, ladies and gentlemen. Who's there? Vader. Vader who? Vader Minute, well, I'll tell you a joke. Welcome to Mondo Minute, baby. Woo! Why did Luke Skywalker cross the road? This was a pretty easy one. Not everybody answered it once. To get to the dark side. Oh, if I wasn't kissing before, I'm getting close now. Who's there? Luke. Luke who? Luke out. It's another knock-knock joke.
All right, and we're back, and Kieran's dying over here. I think that's Kieran's first time hearing anything from Mondo, and that was basically par for the course for Mondo. Basically, what I was expecting.
I think we just found Jer a new friend.
I'll tell you guys later.
Different show.
No, just story I'll tell you off air.
Okay. Let's dive back into it, though, fellas. It's time for the Jedi Archives. All right, each week one of us are going to pick a Star Wars book that hopefully we've read. To just sort of go over briefly in one of our brief segments. Next week, Kieran will have the game in the book, and the week after, Johnny will have it. For me, it's one I'm reading right now. It is Star Wars: The Old Republic Revan. For me, this book was like a gold mine when it came out, because I was that guy that kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for Knights of the Old Republic 3 to come out. And it never did. It almost like it was in development. They actually put quite a bit of money into the game, and it just never came out. And the Revan novel really serves as like Knights of the Old Republic 1.5 and Knights of the Old Republic 3. And even though I would have much rathered a game to finish off that story, I thought the story that we got was really, really good, and did a good job of giving the fans that have waited for an explanation on things some closure in some areas. And I really liked what they did with our character from Knights of the Old Republic 2, Mitra Surik, at the time. And they really strengthened her character in that novel as well. And I'm enjoying my listen through right now on Audible. And it's just really good. I dig it. If you're a Knights of the Old Republic fan, you'll really enjoy this book. Any thoughts of Revan? Have you guys read it or heard it or whatever?
I mean, it's a hell of a book. I haven't read it in a very long time at this point. I read it back when it was, first came out, and it was a heck of a book for, like you said, filling in that gap, in things we didn't know, which was hugely important because we didn't realize just how important that would be to the Old Republic video game, which I believe came out before this, I think the book came out after the Old Republic had launched, so it answered questions about the Old Republic game, like A, why is Revan still alive? B, how did he get captured? And C, who the hell is Darth Scourge?
Yeah.
Which were all questions that we had.
he's just as big a part of that book as Revan is.
Absolutely. And it, is a huge part of those things, it filling in those holes with those characters while still staying authentic to, the original story, which of course is helped by having, a continuous author, throughout telling the games and the book. To me, it goes to saying, a lot of people, put up their Mount Rushmore of Star Wars authors. Well, for me, Drew Karpyshyn is without question on that list. For me, he's right up there with Troy Denning and Timothy Zahn as, some of the best Star Wars authors that, I read anytime they publish. So it was an amazing novel that, stayed true to the characters and true to the story while, canonizing Mitra Surik, which was a nice touch because at the time, everybody just assumed that, it was a guy, and how the story had played out. There was never really a canon ending to that point. Now you get, both the canon
because,
ending.
it was cut short. We got that.
Exactly. So, now we get, the full canonization of that character, give her a name and, expand a bit more on the backstory of who she was and, set up the story to come in the future, which I think was a huge deal. And I personally loved it.
Speaking of this novel, I'm listening to it on Audible, and every time they say the Ebon Hawk is killing me because Mark Thompson, for whatever reason, pronounces it Ebon Hawk. And it's just like, oh my God, stop it. You're killing me here.
Oh, that is terrible.
Yeah, that frustrates me. Kieran, have you read this one?
I have not read that book. I have only heard good things. It's one of those things. The only reason I can give for not getting around to it is there's a fucking 1,000 Star Wars books.
There is. You're not wrong about that.
I own about 50 of them, and I'm not even close. So
it's a must read. I honestly think if you're invested in that story and those characters, even though I suppose none of it's canon anymore, that you give it a shot. It's definitely worth a purchase, whether it's on Audible or a physical copy.
I'm definitely not the Revan acolyte that most people are, but I do enjoy the character. So I mean, I would maybe I'll give it a shot on Audible actually.
Nice. Oh, you'll have to fucking tune out Ebon Hawk every time it's mentioned. So, oh man. Anyways, let's get to Senate here. We don't have too much time for it left in this one. And on this episode, or this segment of the Senate, we're going to ask a very simple question. Where should they go next with the Star Wars cinematic universe? This is where we'll close out the show with, is this topic here. This is what we know. Rogue Squadron has not been officially canceled or delayed, although nobody thinks it hits their release date because they're nowhere close to filming. The Taika Waititi film is still to come, and the Kevin Feige film, which is not the Taika Waititi film, still to come, if either of them ever see the day of light. But honestly, guys, the more I think about it, and the more I dive into old Star Wars stuff and get excited for Kenobi and some of the new stuff that's coming up, I gotta say my preference personally moving forward is to simply don't do standalones. You just don't. Rogue One was great. Solo was okay. But take some time, whether you set it back in the High Republic, the Old Republic, wherever. Take some time and properly flesh out a story that once we see the first movie, we'll be excited to go see the second movie. I would prefer it to stay connected. I'm not saying you can't have a great Star Wars standalone movie. You absolutely can. I just don't know if my excitement is as there for that as standalones. Or pardon me, as standalones as it is for just connectivity.
Well, I'm going to take sort of an opposite stance, and I'm going to say don't be afraid of the standalone. You can have a standalone film exist in this universe and tell a good and great story. You just need to see it through from start to finish. And it needs to make sense and fit in the overall universe. I don't want you going back and telling, I don't want standalones about already established characters. That was the fault of Solo. It's telling Han Solo's story, and there's no way you can live up to Han Solo's backstory because everyone has made up their own because the character lends itself to that. The smuggler that is Han Solo doesn't need a backstory. Rogue One worked better because while it, shoehorned in stealing of the plans for the Death Star, it still had an obvious destination. Even before I can't remember which one, but even before it was spoiled that it was a celebration or D23 or whatever it was, whichever con it was that was spoiled that everybody dies, everybody knew that. I don't think anybody expected there to be characters surviving this story because then the question becomes, well, where were they the rest of the time?
They already have a few of those questions that still need to be answered. So.
Exactly. So, I mean, don't be afraid of the standalone, but make it work and don't shoehorn it into the canon we already have. There is a huge galaxy. Don't be afraid to go to the Outer Rim. Don't be afraid to go to new planets and new places and create new characters. That's another important thing. Create new characters. That's the important thing, is give me a compelling new character and I will be just as happy as whatever you give me for anything else, because no matter what, if you'd have had the Andor series before Rogue One, maybe I care more about the character. But because you're doing it backwards with his story, I'm not nearly as interested.
Let's be honest. All of Star Wars is backwards. This is the way Star Wars is always done. Even right now, you have actual Star Wars material coming out that is, in my opinion, starting to strengthen the sequels, and things that weren't understood about them are now being written to help better understand them. And is it a kind of cheap way to do it? Yeah, but Star Wars has always done that right from the get-go.
I would say that The Mandalorian is the first project that doesn't go backwards. It's all forwards. As the Mandalorian story. You've kind of gone backwards with Boba Fett and filled in that gap because people wanted to know, how did you survive? What happened to you in between? And people cared about that for, to be honest, whatever reason.
Well, we've seen his childhood and him in the Clone Wars.
Well, yeah, but that's different. That's not, going back. That's a flashback. That's a couple minutes of the whole story. It's not, important. The back stuff is, Bo-Katan and things like that, which you told already in its sort of appropriate timeline, whereas the Mandalorian storyline is progressing forward and pushing the canon to be more in line with the sequels to come, which I think is a good thing, because it's going to explain and fill in some of those gaps of who is the rise of the First Order. I think is something that's going to be very interesting, and I think going to play a big part of the Mandalorian going forward.
Kieran, why don't you finish us off for tonight?
I mean, I would like it to be a trilogy again. I would like them to jump back into another trilogy. As for what it's about, I would like, new stuff, brand new stuff. Of course, I actually like the sequels. I acknowledge the problems that they had. Get one person to do everything. Get one person to, even if it's not director,
get a group of people that are on the same page from the beginning.
Yeah, and where things are going to go and where things are going to lead. That's definitely the problem with the sequels, and I acknowledge that. But as for the characters, I really loved a lot of the new characters. I thought Maz Kanata was a very interesting character. I would love to hear more about. I want to know what's happening to Rey. I enjoyed Kylo Ren. Even beyond the problems that people had with what happened to the legacy characters, which was probably never going to be great for everyone. And they definitely did do some weird stuff. I really like the new characters they brought in. So now they have an opportunity where they have to make it only on new characters. Being as that most of the legacy characters are not going to be able to make it in there. So yeah, I would like it to be that. And oddly enough, as much as I really love the High Republic, I don't want it to be anything to do with the High Republic, because I think it's working so well as a book series. And
we know that we already have 2 shows coming. The Acolyte.
Yeah, I'm happy about the show, and I know the Acolyte is going to be the tail end of that, which should be really cool. I'm okay with those
again, right? Because the Acolyte's supposed to come out next year, I believe.
And there'll be more. There should be more books to come after that, I think. Yeah. So, because we're only getting into phase 2 soon enough, like in a year, and there's supposed to be 3 phases.
2025. So,
and that goes backwards. So,
yeah,
phase 2 is a prequel to phase 1.
That's Star Wars for you. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, click the like button, share a comment with us, share the link around, hit the subscribe button. It helps us out. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Fandom Empire, our socials, which is not exclusive to Star Wars, but rather fandom as a whole, at Fandom Empire Now on Twitter, Fandom Empire Now on Instagram, and Fandom Empire Now on Facebook. Big thanks to Tommy for behind the scenes. I see you looking at us. That's right. And big thanks to Mondo for giving us that unique Mondo 2 minutes, since I played the wrong clip the first time. And big thanks to Kieran and Johnny for coming out and doing this. That's going to do it because we're short on time. We'll see you next week on Star Wars Wastelands. Are we going to see episodes 7, 8, and 9 again? Stay tuned next week for that.